Hello for everybody. En español decimos buenos días a todas y todos. I want to thank the organizer of this meeting, and I want to thank you to be here on Sunday morning. I hope that I could contribute to your fight for a better world. We need that. We need you, everybody, the engagement of yourselves. For preparing this talk, I wrote quite a lot because I want to do a book, another book. So you were the pretext of that. No? As we are going to talk about the left, I think that we should know what I understand by left. So the first thing that Fred would do is to read the definition of the left.
Therefore, I believe that the left is a set of forces that struggle to build our society as an alternative to the exploitative capitalist society with its logic of profit. The fights for a society of workers, of organised workers, are based on a logic of humanitarianism and solidarity, one that is orientated towards satisfying human needs. It's a set of forces that struggle to build a society free of material poverty and spiritual miseries that capitalism engenders. And it's a society that cannot be decreed from above, instead must be built from below, where the people play a protagonistic role. That is to say, a socialist society.
In the past, in the 60s, 80s, pertenezco a la generación de la Revolución Cubana.
So I belong to the generation of the Cuban Revolution.
I have quite a lot of accumulate youth, as you know. In that moment, the definition of the left was reformist or revolutionary. The revolutionary were the ones that defend the armed struggle, and the reformists were those who think that has to get the institutional way. I was, how you say, a mí me llamaban reformista.
They used to call me a reformist.
I was a teacher in the University of Marxism, and I had the MIR of Chile, that was a very radical army group, and I was reformist for them because I was defending Allende's government. I want to begin by talking about why we need very rapidly a political instrument, why the left needs a political instrument. I think that we all have seen all these uprisings in the world. We have seen many in Latin America that arrives to even to get out presidents from their governments. But then, nothing. For being able to transform this mobilization of people against, because each day more the people reject the system, reject the neoliberal globalization, you need a political instrument. Why? Because first of all, the conscience of the people, what the people, the vision of the world they have, is the vision that has been given to them by the media, and you have to open their mind to see where are the causes of their malestar, no? The sufrimiento.
Of their suffering, what are the causes of it?
You need also a political instrument because you have to construct, to build a program, the project of society, to show the goal. The people doesn't fight if they don't know quite clearly what is the objective of the fight. No? And this is not a very easy thing in this moment when it's so complicated, the society is so complicated, the economy, that you need really knowledge to be able to create a program, a project of a new society. Also, we have a very, very strong enemy to fight against. And this enemy should be defeated by a very, we could say, scientific and artistic, and I will explain why, way of doing that. Because the politics, the capacity of fighting with good results of an enemy so powerful is really not only knowledge, it's also art. And there are some people that are more están más dotados para hacer la política que otros. Es un arte.
Some people have more skills than others to be able to carry out politics as an art.
There are others, reasons, but I think those are the most important. No? And then what we understand by politics, that is very important, because the left understand, the revolutionary left understand politics in a different way than the bourgeois. In general, the definition of politics in the university is the art of the possible. The politician is the one that knows quite well how to take advantage of the circumstances to do something. No? For us, it's not that the conception of politics. The conception of politics that we have to have if we are revolutionary is the art of doing possible what now seems to be impossible. But this is not because we are voluntaristic. It's not that we want to. It's because we have to be able to create the forces, the social forces, that will permit us to win the battles in the future. So the politics for us is not to win some puestos en el Senado o en la Cámara.
So to just win a few seats in the Senate or in the House of Deputies.
No? Is to be able to build forces from below, to organize people. That is if we want to win the battles, we need to construct social forces. We could win, and I am not against winning the presidents, as I will talk after, no? or Senate or whatever. But if we don't build forces from below, this is not a very sure triunfo. Es un triunfo débil.
It's a very weak victory.
I should tell you that my knowledge comes from two big sources, you could say. I have studied Lenin, all his work, the many tomes, no? And I have put the microphone to the fighters in Latin America. And I have learned quite a lot of them. So the jointure, la juntar estas dos fuentes de conocimiento, ¿no?
So bringing together or uniting these two sources
is what permits me to tell you what I am telling you. So I would have not been able to speak to you if I have not been in the places where the people were fighting. Because we learn very much and much more in the fights of the people than in books. Our concept of politics is also the concept of, this is a class struggle. This is not Napoleon or Chavez or Evo. This is classes. This is people fighting. Those who dominate and exploit and discriminate the others, and those who want to liberate themselves from that exploitation. This is the history. And the history, Marx, what he did was seeing the history, interpreting the history. Because some writers says the violence of the Marxists. And Marx was not violent. Marx saw the violence because there was exploitation, and there were slaves that wanted to be liberated, there were serfs that wanted to liberate, or proletarians that wanted to liberate. This was what was there. Marx saw that and interpreted scientifically what he was seeing. So violence is not our, and I will explain a little more later that. So the conduction, the political instrument is the instrument, and I have lost the idea, is an instrument. Why I prefer instrument than party? Because the parties in the past were many times, especially for the Marxist-Leninists, unhappily, the objective. No, we have to build a party, very strong party. The people comes to the party. We have meetings in the party, formation courses in the party, no? All in the party. No? And we copy. In America Latina, I don't know if you have done that, but we copy the Leninist party that was a party for the totalitarian Tsarist state, no? to apply that mechanically to, in my case, Chile, in a bourgeois democratic system. And Lenin says quite clear, the party or political organization is an instrument for the class struggle. So it should be adapted to the reality that you have to work with. It's different, a party in a repressive totalitarian state and in a bourgeois democratic state. Well, and if you have this instrument to direct, to conduct the class struggle, because, as I have said, only spontaneous reactions don't conduct to the possibility of changing the system that we want to change. And this means that you have to have a strategy. Strategy in military terms means direction of the war, of the battles. No? In our political language is the orientation of the class struggle. No? So we have to know which are the classes that confront in a battle. You should know where is the enemy, how much forces it has, how it fights. You have to know your forces, where they are, which is the state of spirit of those forces, no? Knowing the strong points and the weakened points, no? The state of spirit, I say, no? And you have to know with which arms are they fighting. And that is important, because now we have to know which are the arms that the enemy is using for fight in that situation. No? So we have to define which is the strategic enemy, which is the principal enemy or the principal obstacle to go to our goal. Well, we have to have a goal. No? And so that's why I think the conference of Mike, the idea of where we go is very important. But strategy is how to go to that objective. No? We have to know very clearly, analyzing, Lenin says, the classes that exist in society. Which classes are in favor of maintaining the regime? Which classes are objectively interested in changing? And in these classes that could be against the system, there could be some very clear for the objective that we are searching, and others are only want to change a little. So we have to know very clearly, and we have to be able to see that this is not static. It could change. When the working class is weak, the bourgeois is much more revolutionary than when began the mobilization of the poor, be strong. Then these classes that wanted something, they prefer to even support dictatorship, isn't it, in some cases? So we have to be very, very analyzing, and this analysis of classes has to do with the understanding of the structure of society. So we need to have a theoretical instrument to understand society, and that's something that the instrument should have. No? And we have Marx that has learned us to understand this society. No? But as I say to you, it's very important to know with which arms the enemy fights, and which are the arms, the more important arms that in the world now, the dominant classes or the dominant sectors, because there are now sector of classes, not only you have bourgeois, but in all this bourgeois conglomerado, you have the transnational, for example, and the bourgeois, medium bourgeois, etc. Some that has contradictions with the transnational. And we have to be very careful distinguishing, because the art of politics is to see which is the principal enemy. No? Because if we take all the bourgeois today, we will never do the revolution, I think. The other thing is how they fight. And we have to see that the principal bombs today are the media or not. They say that the bourgeois system, the capitalist system, doesn't need, in many cases, because unhappily we see that it continues the fight, army struggle, and wars in some part of the world, but in general, the arms that they are using are the media. Because if you convince the people that you are living in a wonderful world, nobody will fight against. Or if you convince them that it's the only world possible, no one will fight. So when we are in this, fighting with this enemy, where the arms are the media, where in many of our countries there's no war arms, military presence in the fight, we have to create a strategy to deal with that situation. And the pacific way that we are, or institutional way, is a way that has to do with that. It's not an invention of reformists. I wanted to tell you that it's not only that we have the media, but also that the people wants peace. Our people doesn't want violence. If the violence comes, they will react because they don't want, no querrán ser esclavos.
Because they don't want to be slaves.
No? But the people, if they could, they want to have a life in peace. They want to live, have food, roof, schools, etc. No? They don't want to have violence. And that is important because when Chavez wanted to take out of this corrupted Carlos Andrés Pérez, the president, he began by doing an insurrection, trying to do an insurrection in 92. No? He went in jail because he was defeated, and when he went out of jail, he began to go everywhere in Venezuela, and he wanted to do a new insurrection, better prepared now. But he realized that the people of Venezuela wanted peace. So they discussed the political instrument that was the Movimiento Revolucionario 200. They discussed and they decided to go to the elections because the people didn't want the violence. But, that is very important, if you go to this institutional way, you have to change the rules of these institutions. And that's why the most advanced countries in Latin America, the first thing that they plantean,
the first things they proposed
is a new constitution, to do a constituent assembly and create the new rules of the game. And that was one of the flags of the campaign of Chavez. The other one was corruption, because really corruption is something that is detested by most of the people. So he had the support of middle classes, bourgeois, many people that permit him to win the elections with a very important difference with the others. No? So that is important, to see what the people are feeling. Sometimes the radical left thinks that they are so smart that they know, and they know that the violence will come, so they have to fight with arms from the beginning. No? And that is the best way to fracasar, to have a failure. No? And I will say, when the Salvadorians went to the mountains, it was not because they liked the violence. They went to the mountain because first they have wide mobilizations, and they were killed in that mobilization. And they had to go to the mountains. They were obliged to. No? But unhappily we did la propaganda of the arms. No? And as Chafik, you know the propaganda? You understand?
Yes.
And Chafit Handel, the communist secretary of the party, no? He says that we have let the democratic flag we had given to the opposition or to the left that was not as revolutionary. And the revolutionary left, no, the democracy was liberal democracy bourgeois, no? When the flag of democracy is ours, the left is the more democratic force ever, no? Or should be. One of the first tasks that the political instrument has to do, one is to elaborate the strategy, no? To determine quite clearly, I would say, the principal enemy, the forces, all what I have said. But also, no, one of the important tasks, the society we want to construct, the socialism of the 21st century, should be built by the people, should be a protagonistic society, democratic protagonistic society. And for arriving to that, the political instrument, the most important task, or one of the most important tasks, is to facilitate the protagonism of people. Instead of going to say to the people, you have to do that because I know that was the style before, you have to go be, I say, pedagogos populares, popular pedagogues, would you say, no? That goes where the people are, try to understand, try to see the knowledge that the people have, because the people has knowledge, no? And try to orientate this knowledge potenciando lo mejor, no?
Strengthening it.
Yeah, because there are the masses or the people is not all good, it's influenced by bad things also. So we have to discover the good things of the people and to fight against the bad things or las desorientaciones que tengan, no?
So the misorientations that might exist amongst the people.
So, but to deal with this, if we want to have protagonism, we have to think about which spaces should be the ideal spaces for participation. Because, for example, this quantity of persons here, if you want to discuss something, is not the good space, isn't it? It's much better smaller spaces, but so we have to think which is the space that you can have the best participation. In discussion, this is not the place, but perhaps what Michael says yesterday, this idea of Chavez of the communal council, the communities, little communities, no? Where the people knows each other, where they don't have, they are not shy because, well, you know. So this is important not only to say you have to participate, but you have to think which are the best spaces for participating. No? Other task is surely we have to fight the political instrument against the culture that inherit in the people. So we have to deal with that very clearly. And to elaborate, I say, the program and the platform of fight. And the program, the political instrument should elaborate a beginning of a program, but that idea should be discussed with the people and enriched by the people and perhaps modified by the people. So this should be a dialectic relation between the cadres and the people. No? We need to be able to be the orientators or conductors of a wide quantity of people because the enemy is so powerful that we have to be able to do that. So to be able to do that, we need, I say, a political instrument, but how it begins the political instrument? It doesn't come from the sky. No. Well, the first, I distinguish, not I tell you, Lenin and Latin America, distinguish some steps in the building of the capacity of orientating a wide quantity of people to the objective that we fight for. No? And this first moment is what we call the beginning of revolutionary organization. You have to have some cadres, no? that wants to do something, to construct an instrument to do what we have said. Lenin says we need political chiefs, jefes políticos. No? And Gramsci says we need captains. No? And I wrote to an Italian person why captains are not generals. He didn't know why. Gramsci says captains. But the idea is for winning a war, you need people that conduct the war. No? But Gramsci says that in general, these captains are captains without army in the beginning. But it doesn't matter, he says, because an army without captain never will win the war. No? So we need captains. And I say that perhaps it's not necessary captain without army. If the first moment of the creation of the political organization, revolutionary organization, is to appeal, to llamar, integrar captains that are in the social movements. So the ideal is that in the cadres, in the beginning of a revolutionary organization, you are able to have cadres that are leaders of their movements. So you can have captains with army. That is the idea. But in any case, we need captains. No? That is the first period of building a political instrument. This doesn't mean that there is not a rigid thing. Huh? I will say the three moments, and reality we could have big movements, the last we'll see, in the first moment, and that will create the cadres, etc. But I think it's useful to have first these ideas. No? So, in that moment, this first moment, is the period of definitions. No? They are leftist. When you began to discuss about what are you going to do, etc. And this is a period, unhappily, of big debate in the left. And I want Fred to read what Alfredo Maneiro was an intellectual and revolutionary of Venezuela, very smart, that wrote many things. I will cite again Maneiro after, no? And he describes what happened, and I think it's very interesting how he described these debates on the left.
Alfredo Maneiro said that organizations of a communist origin tended to have a gigantic capacity to attack all adversaries, to fight against any adversary on the left camp, to ridiculize them, convert them into groupuscules. They would invent words such as infra-left, groupuscule, crazy, anarchos, whatever it was, I don't know. In the end, it was an incredible capacity of linguistic construction. Because of this, perhaps the internal struggles of these parties of the left tend to produce a type of vile polemic in which one person ends up being ripped apart. And no one ever knows exactly why they've been ripped apart. They don't even know where the real debate was at. And instead, this real debate is substituted by a bastardized style of discussion, where they're accused of all sorts of things, including of stealing money, of the fact that their lifestyle doesn't correspond to that of an activist. All types of things are produced in these ferocious polemics as a justifiable way to essentially run away from any type of serious discussion.
Well, yes, because it was terrible. We have so much fight in Latin America, and we continue unhappily, that we forget the enemy. The enemy was our friends, our comrades of the left. No? Well, so the topic of unity is one that is presented in this moment. No? And I want only to formulate, but not explain, what Fidel has done in unity. Because Fidel is the artist of unity in Cuba, and that's why that country is still now, even with all the difficulty there, fighting against imperialism. Fidel says, we have not to start from the maximum goals, but by the minimum goals. We have to demonstrate in practice which is the good strategy. Because if you do good things and they result, this is the best way of attracting others. You must not create the unity by forceps. Sometimes we know that it's good, the unity, so we convoke this left. That is an add of siglas, una suma de siglas.
So the sum of acronyms.
Pero no necesariamente the unity. We have to appreciate each revolutionary force by itself, not by quotas. If you have 20 militants, you have one. If you have 100 militants, you have 5. No. Each different group has the same consideration. Well, and that is, and I always cite Fidel, when he was of a movement, 26 de Julio, that has the sympathy and the support of 80% of the people in Cuba that against Batista, that fight against Batista. And when he win, he didn't say, oh, I am the chief of the 26th July, so all the others has to subordinate to me. He says, I abandon the flag of 26th July because now is the flag of the revolution. And he convoked the Directorio Revolucionario, that was one of the other left organizations of students, especially, and the Communist Party, that was the Socialist Party. And they began to try to do the unity that takes time, like 3 years. And there comes the sectarism and many things that, well, but finally they have arrived to construct this solid unity that is so important for maintaining the process. So I want to tell you that I have taken an idea that is so important, I think, of a Chilean sociologist, Carlos Ruiz, that says, insisted in the idea that I say in the beginning, we have to understand how the dominant classes dominate, and this is not, he says, about repression now, is they convince the people that they are the best. So we have to deal with that. And the strategy of the left before was to discuss about programs, about, as I told you, which is more revolutionary or which things, etc. And he says, we have to convince the people now, it's not propaganda. It's not propaganda. What will convince. What we have to do is to build alternative ways of doing things in the territories, as communal councils or communes, or any territory, or the territory in the university or in the workplace. There, we have to build a new democratic way of doing. And building that, we demonstrate what society we want to construct. So the people will see the practice. Because people nowadays, I think everywhere, they don't trust too much in words. Because the words are used by the right. They have appropriated the words, our words. And I say in that moment that happily also, our practice is very similar to the practice of the politician of the right. So the people hear the same words, see the same practice, they don't want anything about politics and political. So we have to deal with that and we have to construct. And this strategy of building in territories permits us to unite quite better because we are discussing how should be the school or how should be things concrete. So it doesn't matter if you are reformist, red, Maoist or whatever, you are a person that has idea of how the school will be. And this helps. And I think that in the university, the big error that we committed in Chile when I was in the university was when Allende arrived, we tried to convince people to militate in the Unidad Popular, en el frente político that supports Allende, instead of worrying about the students, for example, donde comían, or cultures, spaces, etc. No? And the right began to take that, and they win. They win the correlation of force in the university before the coup d'etat. And we had the coup d'etat not only because the military, we had the coup d'etat because we were weak in some things. We have abandoned the work in the base committees of the Popular. We had begun to struggle with each other. No? So coup d'etat comes not only because they have the arms, because we create also the conditions. Well, now we would come to the second step. That second step, in general in our countries, has been that these cadres, these captains, began to have armies, began to first detect where are the more advanced sectors of the social movements and try to understand where they are. This is very important because in general, in the past, we were parties of the working class and we thought that we had to go to the unions of the working class. Well, no? That was, we didn't discuss, we didn't analyze, we just, go to that enterprise without studying. In Latin America, in general, who moves are not the working class, in the sense, el estrecho concepto de clase obrera.
In the very, very narrow sense of what the working class represents.
Because the working class has been very weakened by neoliberalism. First, many have gone to outsourcing.
Outsourcing,
yeah. Flexibility, etc. So the working class is not a group or social group that is moving. No? So we have to see which are the sector that moves, or if we have sector that moves, or if we don't have, we have to analyze which could be the possible sector more prepared objectively to move, no? And concentrate our forces and our action in those sectors. And how to do that? By detecting the natural leaders. This is very important, because if you win a natural leader, you win el campo de influencia que tiene ese líder. ¿No?
So you win also that sector that leader has influence over.
So there are very many experiences in Latin America about that. Jaime Huilo, que comandante, says that when he went to go to work in a countryside, he detected the patriarcha. Patriarcha? Yeah. Yeah, when he win the patriarcha to the revolution, all the community was win, no? In the case of FPL, of El Salvador,
the Popular Front for Liberation,
yeah, they detect that the Andes, the organization of the professor, was the more combativa.
Yeah.
No? Combative?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that organization influenced the students and also the country, the peasants, because they have contact, these professors in the countryside. So, working with them permit them to work quite other sectors. No? So that is very important. And I say that the political organization could be measured, his maturity, no? By the quantity of natural leaders that conquer, not necessarily through the organization. It's not that but conquers to our project. And that is one of the things that we have to think. Where are the natural leaders? And if the natural leaders are not in our organization or not in our project, we have to think why. What are we doing bad? Because we had to conquer this natural leader. We won't do the revolution if we have natural leaders that, the big quantity that are not in our project. And also, well, I have an idea that I don't want to lose. Sometimes when, for example, we are discussing who will be the rector of the university, el rector de la universidad no se dice rector, ¿no?
The vice chancellor.
In the university, no? Sometimes there is a wonderful person that has all the qualities, but is not in the party. So we choose another that is not as good, but is in the party, if we are able to, no? So I think that is an error. We have to choose the best, conquer the best for the project. But let him be what he is. In Chile, in the Popular Unity, we had the terrible thing that for being in any puesto de gobierno, you have to be a militant of one of the parties. And that is an error, I think.
In any post in government, you had to be a member of the party.
I want to tell you what Maneiro did in Venezuela. There were 10 persons that came out of the Communist Party. And instead of trying to build a thing in the room, they began to see, well, what is moving in the country? And they were moving in Sidor, the metallurgicos, the workers in the
steel workers.
Yeah. They were moving in the university, the students and professors, and they are moving in one of the neighborhoods of Caracas, Katia. So these 10 persons concentrate in those, and he says, why not we can construct by taking the leaders, that idea, no, that I told you, no? And they sent one of the 10 went to Sidor to work as a worker. No? And it's interesting that when the movement of the university stops, because that the mass movement goes in waves. So in a moment, the university stops. So they didn't insist on that. They went to the places where there was movement. And Lenin worked with the workers in the strict sense because those were the more important sectors of society that were moving in that moment in Russia against the Tsarism. It wasn't because he intellectually knew that the working class was. No, it was because the real working class was moving. And that is important, I think. The third moment is when you pass from being able to orientate the more advanced movements, social movements, to be able to be the head of a wide mobilization. In that moment, you really, Lenin says, you really are the vanguard. We don't use the term vanguard today because it's so bad use, you say, quemado.
It's a term that's been burnt.
What is being a vanguard? It's being capable to conduct the class struggle. So you cannot be a vanguard by definition. Oh, Fred, we are the vanguard. We have to demonstrate in practice that you are able to conduct, no? But as the word is, we prefer to say, well, which is the moment where the political instrument is able to conduct the wide masses? That is the moment where and in general, this moment is presented when the society is in crisis and many mobilizations comes out. I wanted to speak, but I have no time, about the different process in the evolution of the movement. You have periods of calm, revolutionary period, insurrectional period, contra-revolutionary, but I cannot speak if you want after you ask. No? But when you are really able to orientate the wide mobilizations is when there is a situation in the society of crisis that is not economical crisis necessarily, also political. So the people reject the regime that has done whatever, no? So in that moment, the ideas that has been promoting by the political revolutionary organization are assimilated by that wide quantity of persons, and this means that you have the hegemonia, no? That is that to win the head and the heart of the people, to be able to them to appropriate the project. And in that moment, you have the real army that you need for winning the battles. And that is the moment when it is well conducted that you can have a revolution, no? O sea, but in our case, that we can win the battle of winning the government. We want to go to that goal, socialism, and we decided to win, to use the institutional way, and we arrived to convince most of the people that our project is good and they vote for us. How to build this big thing? What can we do to begin, even if there are not immediate conditions of explosion, how could we construct this wide front? No? And I think that it's very interesting what the Uruguayan says, and many others, also in Salvador, etc. We have to build a platform of fight, or a minimum program, but more than a minimum, a platform that permits all the sectors that has contradiction with the principal enemy to be interpreted by that platform. And that, again, a critique to those who think that for being revolutionary, you have to put very revolutionary goals, and if you put things, little things for the petit bourgeois or for the bourgeois, you are not revolutionary. No? Many times a radical, and I think Lenin said to the student in Chile that a radical program what produce is the contrary. Instead of winning, you lose forces. No? Another thing, and I think is very important, is to create spaces where people could converge and where you could give tasks to every people. And here comes what I think is, and I would like very much you to have a dialectic thing here, that you tell me if it is true or not what I'm saying, is consultas populares, referendum, or plebiscite. You know that we can do legal referendums in some countries of Latin America, but we can do also not legal. So we have done this in practice, both the legal things, no? And in the case of the ALCA, the ALCA,
the FTAA, the Free Trade of Americas Agreement.
Yeah, you know that we have arrived to stop that, the presidents. But before the president, we had a big campaign in at least 3 countries, Brazil, Argentina, and Ecuador, no? Where, and the organizer of that consultation was the church, with the parties, the movement, the social movement. And the idea was, well, to go house by house explaining to the people what means that, no? And why I like so much this? First, because they reclutaban
recruited
people, not necessarily of the party, of the union, but people that wanted to do something and doesn't know what to do. How many times people want and we don't create the spaces for the people to develop themselves? And these people receive the explanation. So they were, why? No? And they had to explain to the others. And in this going to the houses, the petit bourgeois, so if you say the middle classes, students especially, etc., they had to go to the poor sectors, and seeing la pobreza,
Poverty.
Yeah, poverty, they see that, and they were, politically they change, no? So it's not only that you give tasks for a goal that is very important, no? But also the change of the people doing that. So I think that, for example, yesterday somebody says that we have to do something with Telesur. You know that Telesur has been attacked. In Argentine, they are going to, they had, get out the money, I don't know how to say, but you understand. They gave the money in the government, now not. No? So somebody says, well, the solution is that other governments will continue doing. But I think that we must not, as left, consider always the governments, the money of the governments, even our government. We have to, ourselves, the left should defend Telesur. No? And I propose this idea here, I don't know, if we do a campaign, like going house by house as possible, explaining what means the media in this society, what means Telesur, and asking them $1. I don't know, $1, even $1. It doesn't matter the money. What matters is you give tasks, you produce changes, no? So I let you decide if we can do something about Telesur. Well, this means that in the case of Uruguay, I told him, but I will want to repeat here, the jubilados.
The pensioners.
The pensioners were the biggest activists. And we have to think also, because the left also doesn't think we are living in a world where the pensionists are in general growing. And we never consider them as a force, as activists, or do we? Yeah? We have to explain, a ver, léeme, deslegitimar el sistema denunciando sus estructuras ideológicas.
So delegitimize the system by denouncing its structures and logics.
Yeah. O sea, and that is what Chavez has done. When Chavez decided to push socialism in the 21st century as a word to define the goal, they say that Fidel says, no, you should not. Socialism is not seen good by, it's true. In Venezuela, people didn't like socialism. But Chavez began to explain in any time, you know that he speaks very much, no? Every time, this is capitalism, this is socialism, this is capitalism, this is socialism. With little examples of the people living life, no? So now, in Venezuela, the majority of the people, 54% was the last poll,
54%,
accept socialism, like socialism, no? So this is something that we have done. And the final is that we have, I think, to win the local governments and transform those local governments so people would see, this is the government that the left could do. And you know why Lula, a worker, a metallurgical worker, win? When Lula, in the campaign, the opposition says, Lula, a worker doesn't know how to deal with the government. What was the answer of Lula? See our governments, local governments. This is what I want to do. So I think it's a good strategy to concentrate, no? Also in this kind of thing. Well, I think that I will stay here. I think that I haven't thanked this invitation, and I think that I haven't said that I see the leaders of the organization that have invited us doing the little work. Selling the journal, being in the mill. I like that.